Okay, we're finally getting to the infamous quadratic formula. Just, I guess, quick review on this. You've probably done this before. Quadratic formula is another way to find solutions for a quadratic equation or graph. And remember that our solutions are the things that cross the x-axis. So if I had like a graph kind of like this right here and this right here, these are what would be considered the solutions, also known as the roots and the zeros or the x-intercepts. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right in. First and foremost, this one you need to have the equation in standard form. So that means ax squared plus bx plus c, because otherwise we might have our letter, like our variables here, a, b, and c, our numbers, they might be in the wrong spot. Okay, not variables, numbers. So we're going to go ahead and start with an example. Let's say we have x squared minus 8x plus 12. Okay, so the first thing I would do is probably label. So this right here is my b. I have, let's see, I did a with a green. So my a in this case would be a 1, would be this right here. So there's my a. And my c value is the last one, 12. So there's my c. And I'm just going to plug it into the formula. Okay, so I have that x is equal to negative b. So I'm going to put a parentheses for now, and I'll come back and fill it in. Plus or minus the square root. And then I have b squared minus 4 times a. And I'm just putting parentheses now. I'll come fill everything right now. I'm going to make it all nice and color-coded. Okay, over 2 times a. So let's fill in all of our numbers. So our b in this case is negative 8. So negative 8 goes right here. And it also goes right here. Okay. Our a is 1. And there's two a's. There's one on the bottom. So 1 goes here. And there's one on the top. So 1 goes right here. And finally, c is positive 12. And there's only one c, and that goes here. Okay. So the first step in this, and this is where most people actually mess up, is just to plug it in correctly. Because if you put something in the wrong spot, well, I mean, you're going to get it wrong. Okay. So from here, we start simplifying. Typically, I like to simplify the inside first. So everything underneath my square root is what I work with first, because this piece actually gives us something important. It tells us the number of solutions, and it also tells us the type. This piece right here, so like everything underneath the square root, is also known as the discriminant. And if you have me as a teacher, we probably will cover that first before we actually go into the formula. But anyway, so let's go ahead and do that first. So right here I have negative 8 squared. I'm going to rewrite this whole thing. Okay, so let's see, negative, and I'm not going to color code on this step because you already know where everything goes. Negative 8 plus or minus, then we have the square root. Negative 8 squared is going to be 64. Okay, and then here, this piece right here, I'm going to multiply this whole thing out. So 4 times 1 is 4, and then 4 times 12 is 48. So minus 48, okay, all over 2 times 1 is just 2. Okay, and I'm going to be doing baby steps. So some of you could probably do like this next step together with the one I just did. So from here, I'm going to get that negative 8 plus or minus the square root of, let's see, 64 minus 48, that's going to be 16. Okay, so positive 16, and this is all over 2. And now I can go ahead and simplify even further. Okay, so let's use a different color just for the sake of differences. I know that 2 negatives make a positive, so this is going to be positive 8 plus or minus the square root of 16 over 2. And I know that the square root of 16 is just 4. So I have 8 plus or minus 4 all over 2. And in some cases, you'll be able to stop here. However, in this case, because 8, 4, and 2 are all divisible, in this case by 2, we can simplify this. So from here, I'm going to make 2 separate ones, okay? You might have noticed this plus minus in the middle. I haven't talked about it too much yet, but this plus minus is going to give us our 2 answers. Typically, you have 2 solutions in a graph. If you look at the little graph I did, you have, 1, 2, typically. And if you only have 1, then, something will happen inside here, but we'll get to that right now. So this one is going to look like this: 8 plus 4 over 2. And that takes care of the plus. And the minus will be 8 minus 4 over 2. And we just simplify these. So for the first one, I know that 8 plus 4 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is positive 6. And 8 minus 4 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So our solution set for this one, our solution set for this one is going to be 2, 6. And that means that our graph, if I wanted to graph this, would be crossing at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6. So it'd kind of be something like that, I guess. Probably much nicer, but something like that. Okay. And that's it. That's how you apply to one of these. Now I'm going to go back up a little bit just to kind of talk a little bit more about that that discriminant part that I was mentioning earlier. Okay. And talk a little bit about that. So if you look in this one, our number here came out to positive 16. Okay. Now, whenever you have a positive discriminant, that means if you're going to have 2 real solutions. So right here, the discriminant, and this is kind of extra, the discriminant was positive, which means you have 2 real solutions. And that's something you can check in the way beginning. So if you know you're supposed to have 2 real solutions and you get something different, then chances are you did something wrong somewhere, okay? So luckily for us, we do have our 2 real solutions, so this one is good, okay? Let's go ahead and do a couple more. This video might be a little lengthy, sorry about that. Let's say we have, I don't know, x squared minus 10x plus 25 is equal to 0. Okay, so just like before, we label our A, B, C. So our A in this one is a 1. Okay, our B, I forgot what color I used. Let me see, I think I used blue. Yeah, I used the same color. So we'll use yellow for, well, we can use blue, it's fine. Our B for this one is negative 10. Okay, and our C value is 25. So my first step is to go ahead and plug everything in. So x is equal to negative, and then I have my b there, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so there's my parentheses, minus 4ac all over 2 times a. So let's plug in all those numbers. So let's see, all my b's are blue, so I have negative 10 in here, and I also have a negative 10 in here. I have an a down here, so there's my 1, and there's a 1 right here, and my C goes over here. And I mean, obviously you don't have to memorize this formula. I happen to have it memorized because, I'm a math teacher, so there's a couple formulas I just never seem to be able to forget. And this is one of them. Okay, but if you do forget it, you can always go back up. It's right here. Okay, chances are it's posted in the classroom somewhere. So here we go. So now I'm going to go ahead and simplify. Let's go ahead and look at the inside first, just like last time. So we're going to look at our discriminant, which is this piece right here, what's underneath the square root. And I'm going to calculate this separate. That way we don't have to do all that work. So I know negative 10 squared is going to be 100 minus 4 times 1 is 4 times 25 is 100. So In this case, we end up with 0 because this square minus all this gives me 0. And this is actually pretty significant because when the discriminant is 0, and again, we might have covered this in class already. When the discriminant is equal to 0, this means that there is just one real solution, okay? Also known as a double root, just FYI. We won't talk too much about that terminology, but you know, when you get to pre-cal, you'll see these two words more often. So anyway, that means that when I do my answers, I should end up with only one answer. So what might happen is I might have the plus or minus the same thing, and we'll get the same thing. So let's check that out. So we're going to have that x is equal to negative 10 plus or minus, well, this came out to 0, so the square root of 0 all over 2 times 1 is just 2. Okay. From here, I can simplify further. I know again that two negatives make a positive, and that doesn't always happen, okay? It just happened to happen right now. So these are going to be positive, so it's going to be positive 10 plus or minus, the square root of 0 is just, well, 0 over 2. Okay, so from here, it should be a little obvious what the answer is, but you know, we'll go through the motions. For the positive one, so for the positive one, I'm going to have 10 plus 0 over 2. And for the negative one, I'm going to have 10 minus 0 over 2. And this is what I'm going to be simplifying. So 10 plus 0, well, that's just 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And same thing with this one. 10 minus 0, well, it's still 10 over 2 is also 5. So they are the same, which is what we wanted because we only want one real solution according to our discriminant. So in this case, the solution set is just going to be positive 5. And graphically, what this would look like, okay, is you would have, let's see, positive 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You would have the vertex of the parabola right on the axis. So it only touches one time, and that's why it's called a double root, because it's, you know, both of the ends are on the same spot. Okay, so let's go ahead and do one final one. And so far we've done two real, one real, so maybe you can guess what's next. Okay, let's try, let me see, what would give me what I want? X squared minus x, and we'll do plus 22. Let's see if this works. Okay, if it doesn't, you know, that's okay. I'm not really good at coming up with these. So I'm going to jump right into the formula because I think at this point you should know which one is which. So we have negative, well, let's make this a plus. That way we don't have just negatives here. So let's make that a plus. So we're going to have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 parentheses, because it's 4ac, all over 2a. Okay, so just like before, my b in this one looks like it's going to be this 1 here. Okay, so I'm going to put a 1 here and a 1 here. My a is also 1, so I have, you know, I have a 1 here and a 1 down here. I accidentally put that a, but it should be a, I'm replacing it, right? Not writing the a, so there should be a 1 down here. And my final one is that c, which in this case is the 22. So I already have it color coded. So this is my c. So that goes right here. Okay, so negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, And then from here, I'm going to simplify first that discriminant. So right here, I'm taking whatever's underneath the square root and calculating that first. So from here, I'm going to get 1 squared is just 1, minus 4 times 1 is still 4. 4 times 22 is 88. So 1 minus 88, okay, which is actually equal to negative 87. So in this case, I have something very, very different, something that is not even factorable if I'm correct. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite that. This is going to be equal to negative 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 87 all over 2. Okay? So from here, there's a couple things I can simplify and a couple things that I have to kind of think about. Okay? Have we ever had a negative number so far? Well, not in this video, but we do know from the previous video that a negative implies an imaginary number. So I'm going to rewrite this one more time and move up a little bit. As negative 1, I'm going to go ahead and distribute that negative, plus or minus the square root of negative 1 times 87. Okay, all over 2. And that tells me that this one is actually going to have an I, which stands for an imaginary number. Okay, so once again, negative 1 plus or minus I, and then the square root of 87 over 2. Okay, so from here, all I can really do at this point is see if this number is factorable, 87. Okay, because of this I right here, this tells me that there's only going to be, you know, 2 imaginary solutions, which is something we really can't see on a graph. We can kind of guess where they're at, but we can't tell exactly what they are, at least not on the XY plane. Okay, so for 87, I believe this one is going to stay the same because the only factors are 3 times 29, I believe, and those are prime. So we really can't break them down. We can't do any kind of pairing. So this stays the same, okay? And the good thing about these is that since this entire thing is just going to pretty much stay the same, we can't simplify it, and I cannot simplify anything in front here or here or here, we're pretty much done, okay? So the answer for this one is negative 1 plus minus I, the square root of 87 over 2. And it does have my 2 imaginary solutions because of this plus minus here. Okay, so to summarize a little bit, because I know we didn't talk too much about the discriminant in this one, not by word anyway, when the discriminant is negative, okay, and I guess I can write it, let me see, I'll put it right here. So when the discriminant is negative, okay, this implies that we have 2 imaginary solutions. And typically your answer will be left with this plus or minus here, okay? So that's it. That's quadratic formula. Like I said, the biggest issue for most people is just plugging it in correctly. Sometimes if you're not good at your PEMDAS, this piece tends to come out a little weird, but it's nothing that a little practice won't help. Okay? If you have any questions, again, please come by and I'll be happy to help.